I didn't expect the phone call to hit me the way it did. When the lawyer's voice came through the line, explaining that I had inherited my grandfather's property, I thought it would be a routine matter. My grandfather had passed away a few months ago, but it never truly sank in that the land was now mine. I always knew the land was special. It wasn't the size or the location, it was the lake. I'd spent countless summers fishing with him there, learning how to cast, how to be patient, how to savor those quiet, peaceful mornings. The land had been in our family for generations, passed down through the years, and now, it was mine to protect. My grandfather always said the lake was our legacy, something we'd guard for future generations. When I finally arrived at the property, the familiar sights of the tall pines and the shimmering lake gave me a sense of comfort. But as I pulled up the gravel road, something didn't feel right. There were trucks parked by the shoreline, and I could hear the sound of construction, a low hum that made my stomach tighten. I parked my car and stepped out, the grass cool under my boots, but my eyes were locked on the scene by the water. I walked down to the lake, my heart pounding. A team of workers were bulldozing part of the shoreline, clearing away trees, and setting up what looked like foundations. My grandfather's land, the land that had been in our family for so long, was being turned into something unrecognizable. "Excuse me." I called out, my voice unsteady as I approached a man standing by a pile of equipment. "What's going on here? This is private property." The man turned, his face a mix of surprise and irritation. "Oh, this? We're starting the groundwork for a new development. It's all approved. You'll see. It's going to be a nice luxury resort." I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. Approved? This land is mine. My grandfather's. This isn't some resort property. "You're trespassing." The man gave a quick, dismissive shrug. "Look, pal, I don't know what you're talking about. We've got permits, okay? It's all above board. The land's been marked for development for months now. You'll be receiving a notice soon enough." I could feel my pulse quickening. "No, I won't be receiving any notice. I'm telling you, this is my property. I've got the deeds, I've got the papers. My family's owned this land for decades." He didn't even seem to care. "Like I said, it's all in the works. You'll get the paperwork." I stood there, staring at him, trying to process what I was hearing. It wasn't just the bulldozers tearing at the earth. It was the complete disregard for what had always been a sanctuary for my family. I couldn't let this happen. "Give me the contact details for your manager," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "Sure thing," he said, handing me a card. "But like I said, everything's in the works. Don't make a fuss. You'll see." I stared at the card in my hand, my grandfather's voice echoing in my mind. "Protect it, Alex. It's our legacy." I stood there for a long time, feeling the weight of what was happening. This wasn't just about some developers, it was about my family's legacy, about something my grandfather had worked his whole life to protect. And now, I was supposed to stand by and let them destroy it? No. I wouldn't. I spent the next few days buried in legal documents. At first, I thought it would be simple to straighten out this mess. My grandfather had always been meticulous about paperwork. He was a man who valued the law, who'd made sure everything was in order before he ever signed anything. I thought if I just pulled out the deeds, showed them the proof, this would all be resolved quickly. But that's not what happened. I sat in the cramped office in my grandfather's house, papers scattered around me. The smell of old wood and dust filled the room as I flipped through deed after deed, trying to make sense of what was going wrong. The more I read, the more frustrated I became. The boundaries of the land didn't match what the developers were claiming. There was a discrepancy in the survey. A small, insignificant one, at first glance, but when I went over it carefully, I realized, someone had altered the lines. I shoved the papers aside and grabbed the next set. It was a land survey from the 1970s, the year my grandfather had bought the property. And there it was, the same forged signature I'd seen on the recent documents the developers had sent me. Son of a, I muttered under my breath. I leaned back in the chair, feeling a sinking feeling in my stomach. It wasn't just that they were encroaching on my land. It was worse. They were stealing it, using fake paperwork and forged signatures. They were counting on no one ever finding out. I was burning with anger, but at the same time, I felt like I was drowning. The more I dug, the more tangled the mess became. They had all the resources, all the power, and here I was, a single guy, sitting at a table full of documents, hoping to find a way out. I tried calling some old family lawyers, but none of them could help me immediately. It wasn't just a land dispute anymore, it was a fight for everything my grandfather had worked for. Then, the letter came. I opened it quickly, thinking it was some kind of formal notice, but when I saw the words, Community Development Zone, and vacate within 30 days, my heart stopped. They weren't asking for my permission. They were telling me to leave. I slammed the letter down on the table. What the hell are they thinking? I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just about building a resort. This was personal. It was an attack on everything my family had built. I called Samantha, the lawyer I'd contacted earlier, my voice tight with frustration. Samantha, they just sent me a legal notice. They're saying I need to leave. They're trying to push me off my own land. I'm not surprised, she said, her voice calm but knowing. I've been digging into their plans. This is exactly what they've done in other areas. They target property owners who don't have the means to fight back. But you're not going down without a fight, Alex. Not while I'm here. Her words gave me some comfort, but they didn't take away the anger that was building up inside me. The feeling that I was being pushed into a corner. That all of this, my family's legacy, my memories by that lake, was being taken from me, piece by piece. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. I wasn't going to let them steal what was mine. I've always prided myself on being a logical, practical person. On seeing things clearly, cutting through the noise to get to the heart of the problem. But the deeper I dug into this situation, the less I felt like I had a grip on reality. Every time I thought I had a clear understanding of what was going on, the truth seemed to slip away, like sand through my fingers. I was sitting in a small office across from Samantha, a local lawyer who had offered to help me. Her eyes were sharp, her demeanor professional. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in way over my head. She'd been skeptical from the beginning, as if she knew just how dirty the game was. I'd never seen this side of things before, the side that played in the shadows. Alex, she said, pushing a folder across the desk. I've been digging into the developers. They've got ties, deep ties, to local government officials. And it's not just a land grab. They've been greasing palms for years. I stared at the folder, my stomach sinking. How bad is it? She leaned back in her chair. Bad enough. The Homeowners Association president, Bradford, is in on it. The whole thing is rigged, Alex. They've been colluding to push people like you out, to take control of the land. I could feel my blood start to boil. Bradford? I asked, disbelief creeping into my voice. That guy's the HOA president. He's supposed to be looking out for us. Samantha raised an eyebrow. That's what he wants you to think. He's been working with the developers to smooth the way. The HOA has been giving them access to land it doesn't even own. And they've been doing it for years. I sat back, processing the words. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. How could this happen in my own community? How could the people I'd trusted to protect us be part of something so crooked? We've got to confront him, I said, determination flooding through me. Samantha's voice was calm, but there was a hint of caution in it. "You're not ready for that. Bradford's not someone you can just challenge. He's got connections, and he'll crush you if you push him too hard." "I don't care about his connections. This is my land. I'm not backing down," I said, my fists clenching on the edge of the desk. Samantha sighed, then stood up and handed me a piece of paper. "Here's where he's staying today. But think carefully, Alex. You can't go in guns blazing. This is bigger than just you now." I left her office, the weight of her words hanging in the air. As I stood in front of Bradford's office building, I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my grandfather's legacy, about all the memories tied to that land. I knocked on the door, and Bradford's voice called out from the other side. "Come in." I stepped inside. Bradford's cold, calculating smile greeted me, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Alex, good to see you. What can I do for you?" "Cut the crap, Bradford," I said, voice steady but with an edge. "You're behind this. You're working with the developers to steal my land." He laughed, leaning back in his chair. "You're mistaken, Alex. This is all above board. But I'd suggest you don't make waves in the community. People don't like it when outsiders stir things up. It's better for everyone if you just let this go." I felt a sickening knot in my stomach. "I won't back down. This is my property, and I won't let you take it." Bradford's smile faded just slightly, but it was enough to make me feel like I'd struck a nerve. He leaned forward. "If you know what's good for you, you'll let this go. You won't win this fight, Alex. Trust me." I left the building feeling more isolated than ever. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut: the system was rigged. They had the power. They had the connections. And I was just one guy standing in the way. But I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. The fight for my family's land had just begun, and I was going to see it through, no matter what it cost me. I don't know how many nights I spent hunched over those dusty old records. It felt like every time I found something that gave me a glimmer of hope, another wall went up, another question I couldn't answer. The sense of helplessness kept creeping in, clawing at me, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't just walk away. My grandfather had built this life, this legacy, with his bare hands. And I wasn't about to let some corrupt developers and a shady HOA tear it down. I started with the deeds, the ones my grandfather had kept in a leather-bound folder. It seemed simple at first. Land records. Tax documents. But the deeper I dug, the more conflicting stories I found. I found one deed saying the property boundary stopped at a line of trees. But then another one from 1967 suggested the boundaries extended farther. The inconsistencies piled up, and with each one, my frustration grew. How was I supposed to fight something when the rules kept changing? I was about to give up when I stumbled on a faded piece of paper hidden in the back of the folder. It looked ancient, but as I unfolded it, my heart stopped. It was a land agreement, dated 1973, signed by my grandfather and a handful of local officials. My eyes scanned the words, and it hit me like a freight train. This document granted my family exclusive rights to the lake and its shoreline. Not just the land, it was specific about the water rights, the fishing rights, everything. My grandfather had made sure we could never be removed from this land, that no one could mess with the shoreline, no matter who came after us. I leaned back in the chair, the weight of the discovery sinking in. This was it. The developers had no right to the lake. They had no right to push me off my land. But the more I read, the more it became clear. This wasn't an accidental oversight. The developers knew about this document. The HOA knew about it. They'd buried it, hidden it. Because it stood in the way of their plans. They thought I'd never find it. They thought I'd never question their authority. I took the document to Samantha, my only ally, and watched her eyes as she scanned the pages. "This is exactly what they're trying to cover up," she said, tapping the page with her finger. "Your grandfather made sure this property was protected. But these guys, they've been working in the shadows to erase this history." My hands shook as I tried to process it. They were trying to steal something that wasn't even theirs. I wasn't just fighting for a piece of land, I was fighting for my family's history, my grandfather's work, my roots. But even with this evidence, I could already feel the weight of the battle pressing down on me. The developers and the HOA, these were powerful people. They had connections, influence, and money. I had a piece of paper and a sense of justice, but I knew that wasn't enough. I had to keep going. I had to expose the truth, even if it felt impossible. Samantha looked at me, her expression soft but determined. "They won't give up easily, Alex. But you've got the truth now. That's something." I nodded, but my mind was racing. I knew it wouldn't be easy. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I had the truth on my side, and no matter what it took, I was going to make them pay for what they'd done. I could feel the weight of the documents in my hand, the papers that proved I was right, that my family's land was being stolen right from under us. My palms were sweaty, my heart pounding in my chest as I stood in front of the HOA office, staring at the cold, steel door. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and hoping for all at once. The confrontation I'd been preparing for in my mind for days. I wasn't ready, not really. I had the evidence, clear, undeniable proof, but the power I was up against. That felt like a monster I wasn't sure I could defeat. But I had no choice now. I couldn't let them get away with this. Not after everything. I took a deep breath and knocked. Bradford's voice came through the door, smooth and calm, like he hadn't a care in the world. "Come in, Alex." I stepped into his office, the same office that had been the seat of his power for years. He was sitting behind a massive desk, the kind that looked like it belonged to someone who considered themselves above everyone else. The man was all sharp suits and forced smiles, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I knew what he was. "Bradford," I said, my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. "I have something you need to see." He didn't even look up as I placed the documents on his desk. "What is it this time?" "Another one of your disputes?" he asked, as if I were just some nuisance. "No," I replied, my voice harder than I expected. "This is the real deal. These papers prove the land I'm fighting for belongs to my family. My grandfather secured exclusive rights to the water, the shoreline, it's all right here." I slammed the papers down, watching as his eyes flicked over them briefly, not giving them the respect they deserved. I could see the smirk forming on his lips. "This is a waste of time, Alex. You think these old papers are going to stop progress? You think you can just waltz in here with a few dusty old documents and stop a multi-million-dollar development?" My stomach churned at his arrogance. "This land isn't for sale, Bradford. You don't get to make that decision. The developers have no right to it, and neither do you." He leaned back in his chair, the smile never leaving his face. "You should leave this to the people who know what they're doing. You're not going to win this fight. People are counting on this development. Your fight, it's small. It doesn't matter." It was hard to swallow the words, but I couldn't back down. "You think you can bully me into submission, but I'm not backing down. Not now, not ever. I'll take this to court. I'll expose what you've been doing behind closed doors. This isn't about progress, it's about greed. And I'm not afraid of you." Bradford's smile faltered, just a little. He could sense it then, the determination in my voice, the shift in my stance. The fact that I wasn't shaking, wasn't backing away like everyone else he'd crushed before me. For a moment, we just stood there, the tension hanging thick between us. My hands were still clammy, but something in me had shifted. Maybe it was the discovery of those papers, Or maybe it was the fact that I was finally standing up for something that meant everything to me. My grandfather's legacy, my family's history, my land. He leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. You think you're the first person to try to take me down? You won't win. People like you never do. But I wasn't backing down this time. I met his gaze, steady and unwavering. Watch me. I turned on my heel and left, feeling like the weight on my shoulders had lifted just a little. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Confidence. The first taste of victory. This was bigger than just a piece of land, it was about standing up for what was right. And now, I was ready to fight with everything I had. I had no idea what I was getting into. The moment I stepped into the world of lawyers, courtrooms, and endless paperwork, I felt like I was drowning. The system was overwhelming, confusing, bureaucratic, and, worst of all, corrupt. I had always thought the law was supposed to be about fairness, about right and wrong. But all I saw now was a game, one where people like me didn't stand a chance against the powerful players like Bradford and the developers. Alex, we're going to need to get the filings done by Friday, Samantha said, her voice calm, but even she couldn't hide the strain in her tone. She was trying to keep me steady, but I could hear the tension in the air between us. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion settling in. I don't even know where to start, Samantha. Every time I think I've got something, they just throw something else at me. They've been stalling, pushing back everything. I don't know if I can keep doing this. She sat down across from me, her gaze serious. You're not alone in this, Alex. We're going to push back, too. Every delay, every bit of intimidation, we're going to turn it into evidence. They can't keep pulling these tricks forever. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But it felt like I was fighting a losing battle. I was getting crushed under the weight of it all. Every phone call, every email, every meeting felt like it was going nowhere. And yet, every time I thought about backing down, I saw my grandfather's face, the legacy he had built with his own hands. This wasn't just about me. It was about keeping that legacy alive. But still, the pressure mounted. I spent hours sifting through documents, trying to find that one smoking gun that would end it all. Instead, I found myself tangled in a mess of legal jargon and red tape, each page more frustrating than the last. Bradford's pulling every trick he can, Alex, Samantha said after reading the latest round of legal documents. This is their tactic, wear you down, make you feel like you can't win. But we're not backing down, are we? I looked at her, my frustration giving way to something else, determination. No. We're not. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Every time we seemed to make progress, there was another roadblock. The developers had money. They had influence. They had connections. And it felt like every corner I turned, someone was waiting to tell me why I couldn't win. At one point, I even had a government official laugh in my face when I tried to push forward. You think you're going to beat these guys, he'd said, shaking his head. You're just one man. They've got lawyers, money, all the power in the world. But what else was I supposed to do? Let them bulldoze my grandfather's legacy? Let them erase everything he worked for? I wasn't giving up. I couldn't. Every time I felt the weight of the system crashing down on me, I thought about the lake. About the summers the first spent there with my grandfather, the memories tied to every inch of that land. Samantha stood by me every step of the way, and together, we began to push back. It wasn't easy, but I knew I was doing the right thing. Slowly, with every legal maneuver, every document filed, every roadblock we broke through, I started to feel something shift. Not just in the case, but in myself. I wasn't the same person who'd walked into this fight so unsure. I was someone who wasn't afraid to stand up. I was already in over my head. The legal battle, the endless hours of paperwork, it all felt like a labyrinth. But what I didn't expect was to uncover something that made every bit of it feel even more twisted than I'd imagined. As I kept digging into the records, I started to notice a pattern, one that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just the developers trying to push me out. It was Bradford. It had always been Bradford. I was at my kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of documents, trying to piece together the tangled web of land records and legal loopholes, when I found it. A set of bank statements linked to the HOA's accounts, his accounts. And buried within those numbers was something I never could have guessed. I stared at the page, my hand trembling as I read the lines. Bradford had been embezzling funds from the HOA for years. There were payments to companies that didn't exist, large sums moved into offshore accounts, and then, the biggest shock of all, he'd been funneling money directly to the developers. I couldn't breathe for a second. My eyes kept flicking between the statements, as if they might change, but they didn't. The truth was right there, staring back at me. Bradford wasn't just a figurehead, he was the puppet master, pulling strings to line his own pockets while selling out the very community he'd sworn to protect. Unbelievable, I whispered under my breath. The more I dug, the worse it got. Bradford had been orchestrating the entire thing. He'd used his position as HOA president to get his hands on properties, quietly acquiring land on the cheap, using his power to push through shady deals. All these years, he had been using the community's trust to fill his pockets. I couldn't believe it. The anger surged up in me, hot and fierce. This wasn't just about the land anymore. It was bigger than that. I wasn't fighting for a piece of property, I was fighting to expose a system of corruption that had been allowed to fester for decades. I called Samantha immediately. "You won't believe this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but my heart was racing. "Bradford's been stealing from the HOA. He's been working with the developers, embezzling money for years." "What? Are you sure?" she asked, the disbelief clear in her voice. "I've got the proof right here. I just found it. This isn't just about the land anymore. This is about taking down Bradford and everyone who's been helping him." There was silence on the other end for a moment, and then she said, "This is huge, Alex. We can't just fight for your land anymore. We need to expose him. We need to show the community what he's been doing." I felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about justice, for my family, for the neighbors who had no idea they were being robbed by someone they trusted. I was ready to bring this all to light, no matter what it took. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Bradford had power, connections, and resources. But now, I wasn't just fighting for my own piece of land, I was fighting for the soul of this entire community. "You're right," I said, the conviction in my voice surprising even me. "We're not just going after him for the land. We're going after him for everything." The fight had changed. It wasn't just about one man trying to take what was mine anymore. It was about taking down the entire corrupt system that allowed him to thrive. The stakes had just gotten a whole lot higher. And I wasn't going to stop until I brought him down. I had no illusions about what this moment meant. The rally wasn't just about gathering people, it was about shaking the foundation of a system that had been built on lies and corruption for far too long. This was it. The final confrontation. The one I'd been working toward for months. Samantha had warned me it wasn't going to be easy, but the truth had to come out. I couldn't let Bradford and the developers continue their theft any longer. I could already feel the tension building in my chest. My palms were sweaty as I stood in front of the courthouse, staring at the crowd that had gathered. Some were friends. Some were neighbors who had no idea what Bradford had been doing behind their backs. But all of them were here for the same reason. To see justice done. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about the land anymore. It was about everything my grandfather had built, everything my family had worked for. And I was going to make sure the truth came out, no matter the cost. "All right," I said to Samantha, trying to steady my voice. "We've got one shot at this. No turning back." She looked at me, a mixture of determination and concern in her eyes. "You've got this, Alex. Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I believed myself. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. The fear wasn't gone. It was just manageable. I had to believe I was doing the right thing. As I stepped up to the podium, Bradford was already standing on the other side of the courtroom, smirking like he was untouchable. I knew this was going to be a fight, but the energy in the room made it feel like we were standing on the edge of a cliff, one push away from everything tumbling down. I cleared my throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. What you're about to hear isn't just about land disputes. It's about corruption. It's about betrayal. And it's about the truth." I could see the murmurs spreading through the crowd. People were beginning to listen. Good. They needed to hear this. I laid out the documents, each piece of evidence proving that Bradford had embezzled funds, colluded with developers, and used his position to secure land for cheap, land that wasn't his to take. "Bradford has been selling you all out. He's been working with the developers to steal our land, and he's been lining his pockets with your money," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. Bradford's face twisted into a mask of anger. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, trying to regain control. "You've got no proof. None of this means anything." I turned to the judge, then back to the crowd. "Oh, I've got proof. You can lie all you want, Bradford. But the truth is right here in these documents. And it's about time this community saw what you've really been doing." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room on me. The tension was thick, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Then the judge spoke. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm ordering an immediate halt to the development project. Bradford, you will be investigated for embezzlement and fraud." The crowd erupted. I turned to see people applauding, some even crying. The victory felt surreal. The developer's project was done, and Bradford was going to face the consequences of his actions. As I looked out at the crowd, something hit me. This wasn't just a victory over corruption. It was a victory for my family, for everything my grandfather had worked to protect. And it was a victory for the community that had been lied to for so long. I hadn't just saved my family's land. I'd exposed a corrupt system and, in doing so, had become the person I always needed to be. The fight wasn't over, but this was a beginning. And I wasn't backing down now. I sat on the old porch swing, the same one my grandfather used to sit in, looking out over the lake. The water was still, reflecting the clear sky like a mirror. It felt peaceful, almost surreal, considering everything that had happened. I had fought for this, fought for my family's legacy, and now, it was mine again. When I first inherited the land, it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. The house, the lake, the land, it was all part of a legacy that wasn't mine to lose, but the fight I'd found myself in made me question everything. I had walked into this battle thinking I was just protecting my property. What I didn't realize was that the fight wasn't just about land, it was about standing up against a system of corruption that had taken hold of my community. The legal battle had stretched on for months, but it felt like a lifetime. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I thought I'd never be able to win. The developers had their connections. Bradford had power. They were the system I was up against. I couldn't shake the feeling of being just one person against a giant. But as the months went by, something shifted in me. I stopped seeing myself as an outsider, as someone with no power, and started seeing myself as part of something bigger. Samantha had been my rock through all of it. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She helped me see the bigger picture. The legal victory was a relief, but the real victory, what I hadn't expected, was how much I'd grown through it all. I'd learned that standing up for what's right wasn't just about winning the case, it was about being the kind of person who refused to back down, even when everything seemed impossible. Now, as I sat here on the porch, the weight of the fight finally lifting from my shoulders, I realized just how far I'd come. I was no longer the guy who just wanted to fish by the lake in peace. I was a person who had faced corruption head-on, stood up to the odds, and, in doing so, changed not just my own life, but the lives of everyone in this community. The lake, the land, it was secure for future generations. The people in the community who had once turned away from me now saw me in a different light. I had become someone they could rely on, someone who fought for what was right. The neighbors who once kept their distance now waved at me with smiles, and I could feel the shift. We had won together, even though they hadn't all realized it until now. I let out a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. The fight had been worth it. I had my family's land back, and more than that, I had my own peace of mind. The struggle had changed me, but it had also shown me what mattered most. The lake, the land, and the community, it wasn't just about ownership. It was about doing the right thing. And I had learned, no matter how impossible the fight might seem, it was always worth standing up for what's right. I smiled to myself, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The lake was still, just as it had been when I was a kid. And this time, I knew it would stay that way.